Hi, I'm Elizabeth Hackford, I'm the Law of Attraction lady, and today I'm going to talk about self-talk. What is your internal mantra? What a lot of people do without realizing, myself included, is we say certain sentences repeatedly over the course of our life or over the course of a year, and we keep saying those sentences unintentionally, but it's internal talk. Sometimes we think the sentence and sometimes we say it out loud. Things like, I'm always late, I always forget my umbrella, I always come second, I never get upgraded. And we just say these things and they start to become a mantra, and it's our internal self-talk. And the more we say it as a mantra, the more it gets written as a blueprint in our subconscious, a permanent creed, a permanent paradigm that your subconscious operates from, and it won't change until you change the mantra and make a shift in what your self-talk is. Our self-talk, what we are saying to ourselves, is really important, and we really need to pay attention to it, because sometimes we're implanting paradigms into our subconscious that we absolutely don't want to be there. But some of those mantras and some of that self-talk is actually very positive. So what we need to do is pay real attention to what we are saying to ourselves and filter out the stuff that isn't helping us and keep the stuff that is helping us and even tweak it to make it better. So for example, instead of saying I always forget my umbrella, change it to I never forget my umbrella. And just keep saying that to yourself. I never forget my umbrella. I never forget my umbrella. Next time you're carrying your umbrella, just keep this mantra going in your head, and I bet you won't forget the umbrella. And instead of saying I never get upgraded, start saying sometimes I do actually get upgraded. Now you can't go straight from I never get upgraded to I always get upgraded, because there's too much evidence to resist that, so your subconscious won't accept it unless you really go down a program of self-hypnosis, which you can do, but it's probably not worth it. But just change the self-talk to I sometimes actually get upgraded. Now you might not have been upgraded yet in your life, but these mantras, these sentences are outside of time. So at some point in your life you will get an upgrade when you go onto a flight. So for example, my grandma, she lived in an old people's home for the last 20 years of her life, and she was actually in very good physical shape. And the old people's home she was at was quite lively. Every Saturday they had a games night, and sometimes there were prizes and sometimes there were even cash prizes. And my grandma had this mantra, I always win, and she always did. She always won the bingo, she always won whatever lottery they had, she always won something. And what was interesting is that if she won cash, she always gave the money to charity. She thought she was a conduit for God to give money to the poor, and she believed that, and she just repeated it. That was her mantra. Oh, I always win. Oh, I always win the bingo. She would laugh, but that was her mantra. I always win the bingo, and sure enough, she always won. Take Johan, my friend, my lawyer friend. He was one of these kind of guys who was a great listener, and he would listen to people's problems and he would come up with really pertinent advice, and he always did give advice. And at the end of giving his advice, he'd always say to that person, I'm always right. You should do this. Do it, because I'm always right. And that was Johan's mantra, I'm always right. And what's interesting about the mantra is you start to believe it so deeply in your subconscious that people around you believe it as well. So when Johan gives somebody a piece of advice and things don't turn out well, they don't think, oh, Johan was wrong. They think, oh, this must be an anomaly because Johan is always right.
An anomaly. It's very difficult to say that.
So they don't tell him that he was wrong. Whereas all the people who follow his advice and it turns out to be right, go back to Johan and say, you were absolutely right, Johan. He says, I know, because I'm always right. And that's the mantra that he believes, and that's actually quite a positive one. He wasn't conceited about it, it was just a fact, and he made it a fact by repeating that mantra. Now here's an interesting one. I'm a survivor. Now, a lot of people think this is a very positive thing to say, but I'm going to show you how it's maybe not the best thing you should be saying to yourself. Let me give you the example of Peter. Now, Peter has just had a series of setbacks over the last 5 years of his life. His wife's divorced him, he's had a period of ill health, but he's okay and he's just getting back onto his feet. And just as he's getting back up on his feet, suddenly he loses his job. But all the people around him say, don't worry, Peter's a survivor. He will always get back up on his feet. And Peter, when he's with his friends talking about his troubles and what is he going to do next, he says, but I'm a survivor, I'll get through this. And all of his friends pat him on the back and say, you sure are a survivor. Good for you, Peter. And that's the mantra that Peter is repeating to himself and his friends around him. I am a survivor, Peter the survivor. Because he keeps repeating this to himself, his subconscious absorbs that as a paradigm, as a creed. I am a survivor. But what happens is his subconscious and his energetic vibration is one of a survivor. Now, how can you vibrate energetically as a survivor if you haven't got anything to survive? So what's happening there is that Peter's mantra, that appears to be quite positive, is actually causing him to vibrate at the level of a survivor, and he's therefore attracting more situations from the universe that he needs to survive. And you don't really want that, Peter. So Peter, stop saying I'm a survivor and start saying I'm a winner instead. The thing is that the mantra's already been made and it's manifested over the last 5 years of his life. So he needs to make a shift quickly, otherwise the next 5 years of his life, he's going to be given situations from the universe to survive. So don't say to yourself, I'm a survivor. Turn that into, I'm a winner, because you want to have situations where you're winning. You don't want to have situations that you need to survive, because they're hard work. I had a similar experience. I used to have a lot of setbacks in my life, but I always bounced back. And the term that everybody used with me was Elizabeth always bounces back. And I proudly bounced back. I said, don't worry about it. My latest setback, whatever it was, some massive slap in the face, I would say to my friends, don't worry, tally-ho, I'll bounce back. Because I always bounce back. I always bounce back. I always bounce back. And that was my mantra. I should stop saying it. That was the mantra I had. I always bounce back. Now, how can my energetic vibration be of somebody who bounces back if I've got nothing to bounce back from? So guess what? The universe is going to keep giving me experiences that I need to bounce back from. And I don't want those experiences. I just want to be up here having a good time. So I realized I had to stop saying I always bounce back, because I don't want situations to bounce back from. So can you see how your self-talk is so important? The mantras that you're saying to yourself. So instead of saying I never get upgraded, start to say sometimes I actually get upgraded. Instead of saying I'm always late, say I'm sometimes late, but usually I'm on time. And then eventually you can start saying I'm always early. You can go one notch at a time, whatever's believable. Anyway, if you found this useful, if you had a bit of an aha moment, please comment down below if there's something that you were saying to yourself that you needed to change. And if you like this video, if you like this presentation, please hit the like button, and please subscribe if you haven't already, to find out more about the law of attraction and how to rewire your subconscious for a better life. That's all for now. Bye-bye.